Welcome again, class, to another session here on TESOL Methods for language arts, teaching language arts to second language learners. Today we're going to be focusing on extensive reading, and hopefully you're going to be able to find out why this is good, benefits of it, the drawbacks of it, and how to possibly incorporate it into your teaching. Let's go right along here to some introductions for extensive graded reading. Why use extensive graded reading? Well, the typical reading materials and the typical stuff that you normally give students to read, the grammar is too difficult. The grammar is too high, okay? And so it's too difficult for them to try to decipher it. At the same time, the vocabulary is, of course, too low. They don't have enough vocabulary to understand what's going on in the text. And so someone, actually this probably comes from first language learning for little tots. As they're learning language, they have graded readers. They have the TESOL, if you remember this from years ago. It was a reader that included materials appropriate to their level, but it was also appropriate to their grammar, their language ability. And so they had it designed for them, and that's what they started doing with these extensive graded readers to try to answer these two issues here, that the lower the grammar capabilities and lower the amount of high vocabulary so that students can understand it. So if you compare the original text and the graded reader text, you're going to find some differences. Take, for example, just for example, The Grapes of Wrath, which was at one time a novel. You take that story and you write it down. You write it down so that the grammar is easier, and you write it down so that the vocabulary is lower. So there are fewer forms, okay, and there are fewer word families. And they can design these texts so that you have word families of up to 2,000 words. Okay, most frequently used word list. Most frequently used word list is typically what is used when they're designing these courses. Research out there indicates that they need between 2,000 and 3,000 words in order to function normally in everyday society. If they want to do academic work, they're going to have to learn a lot more, depending on the field that they're studying. So there's a difference between a graded reader and a regular text. Again, they do this with little kids when they're trying to introduce something to them, but these aren't necessarily little kids. These are kids learning a second language, so they created these extensive graded readers. This is meaning-focused input. So there should be reading and doing things that they like, that they enjoy. It should be kind of a fun materials that they're doing. It's meaningful to the reader, okay? This also works on fluency development. These two of the four strands that they're talking about, or that Nation was talking about when he talked about setting up a program, a curriculum, that you should include these four areas: meaning-focused input, meaning-focused output, linguistic focus, and then fluency development. This is focusing on meaning-focused input and fluency development. For fluency development, just get them to read a lot so that they can learn to read the flow of language. Okay? They can learn that fluency, and it's going to be better for them. Again, reasons for using this. One is to show them the joy of reading, get them hooked on reading so that they will want to continue. Okay, and that's one of the ideas for for using extensive graded reading. And that's a good objective to have. They also get to learn more about culture and learn more about the information, obviously, in the stories. It also allows them to slowly strengthen their reading abilities because they can start reading materials. If they're reading a lot of materials, slowly begin to develop more skills and strengthen more complicated reading materials so that they can move up. Okay? It does require careful planning. Requires careful planning because you've got to have all these materials. I could go out to the net and go get a whole bunch of stuff, but it's not going to be designed specifically for English language learners because those those extensive graded readers are all copyrighted. Someone needs to be able to do that. Now, you can go do that. You can go to the Complete Lexical Tutor, and you can set up what's the word here? You can dump text in there, and it'll tell you how many, the word frequencies, and you can go back and revise it, and so that it gets down to the level that you want. So you can actually go out and make stuff, but it takes a long time. It takes a lot of planning. Okay. So it takes a lot of time to get that done. At the same time, the learning that the student makes is mostly incidental. Okay? Because really, you're not doing any intensive investigation of the text. You're not analyzing words, concepts. You're not analyzing grammar. You're not analyzing vocabulary. You're just reading. Doing a lot of reading. And so the things they do learn are going to be incidental. And that's not bad, but it's certainly not sufficient. That's the point that I would make with regard to one of the negatives. Intensive reading is very different. Intensive reading, you focus on high-frequency items. You focus on high-frequency grammar and vocabulary. Okay? And this is intensive reading, very different from extensive reading, right? You focus on universal strategies, strategies that you can use to try to understand what's going on. Other things you can do with intensive reading, you can do spelling, or you can concentrate on vocabulary or grammar. You can focus on written structures because you're analyzing the language. You can focus on deciphering messages. You can focus on the genre. Those are things that you would do. In other words, these are all language focused or comprehension focused. Now, with extensive graded readers, you're going to have some comprehension questions as well. That's focusing more on the story. So you're not going to get into deeper things like implications or inferences or the what-ifs of a text. So intensive is also necessary. So you're going to have the extensive, and that's good. It's not going to be sufficient. You're going to need intensive as well. All right, some goals and some limitations with regard to extensive graded reading. Graded readers are a great thing to have. You need to have a library of them. There's a lot of materials that are out there. And you want to do this so that your people can be interested in what they're reading. You got to have a library of stuff so they can pick and choose what they'd be interested in. You want to help them focus on meaning, not on language, okay? They're focused on trying to understand what's going on in the text. Language, it's not going to be a focus, okay? You want them to be focused in their reading and to have fun. Let them choose the amount and the speed with which they read. Now, you may want to set so many per, like I know Nation suggests 1 book a week. Well, it depends on how big the book is. It depends on their own abilities. Okay, if they're doing that well, then they should be going with smaller texts, and so they may be able to get more than 1 done a week. According to Schmidt, you should be knowing, actually Nation as well, you should know about 98% of the words on a page so that you don't need a dictionary, so that you don't lose the thought or idea. Well, that's very limiting if your students have low vocabulary, which means they're going to probably have smaller texts. But it should be fun reading, and it should focus on fluency and speed, trying to get through things quickly, but still understanding what's going on. So we want to have as few roadblocks as possible. Again, some of the limitations, takes a lot of time to get better at this. Right? It takes a lot of time. The gains will gradually be lost without repeated encounters. Requires a large amount of reading material, and that's what I was saying before. So really what we're looking at is, let's just, we take a peek at two mountains, for example. You've got this mountain that you need to go over, and you could, go straight up to get over this mountain, right? You could climb straight over it. The other thing you could do is that you could have this mountain here, and then you could go around and around and around and around and around and around until you get to the top. Now, which one is going to get you there faster? Which one is going to be more frustrating? Okay, and you see the difference there. The real question now is, how do we do this in such a way that we do learn quickly, but we also enjoy it while we're going? So one of the ideas here for extensive graded reading is that we draw out the process by making it more quote-unquote fun. But it takes a lot of materials, especially because we're doing this via incidental learning and not so much on deliberate learning. Getting rid of the use of the cognitive abilities. We're just going to have fun with what's going on. Okay, and so that's the pluses and minuses there. In order for one of the things that you want to do if you're going to be doing extensive graded reading. And in my opinion, something you should always do when you're teaching. When you're teaching someone, you need to find out what their strengths and weaknesses are. Here in this section, we're talking about a vocabulary base, but you're going to need a writing base, a speaking base, a grammar base, right? So that you'll know where they are, and that'll help you find out what you need to do to get them where you're going. So you always want to do some type of diagnostic to find out where they're at. Now, most words need to be known on a page, and according to research, Nation, Schmidt, and others, between 95 and 98% of the words on a page need to be known to get extensive graded reading. If you don't have that, then you're going to be forced to stop and look up a word, and that's going to slow the whole process down, right? In order to read normal fiction for a native English speaker, they need almost 9,000 words. That's a lot of words. Consider that most school systems, most language systems, do very little above 3,000 even, as far as training. Students have to learn these on their own. And Schmidt has a very good article, which I'll be showing you this week, that talks about the need to work in the mid-vocabulary range so that students can help bridge that gap as they try to enter university, for example. To gain such a large number of words, extensive graded reading is recommended. And again, although it's recommended, I will stress to you that I do not believe it is sufficient. It may be necessary, yes, but it's certainly not sufficient. We need it for fluency. We need it to maintain enjoyment of the system, but it's not going to be enough if we're going to get up higher. We need to have explicit learning. Okay. Some texts and protocols, right? You need a database of interesting texts and appropriate materials. How do you do that? Well, you need to set up a very large library. And then you need to monitor and encourage your students. You got to set it up somehow. You got to have this big library, and how do you get them to read? In the past, people used notebooks, or they said, at the end of the week, you have to do an oral book report, and they would share with one another their book report, but they didn't take notes or something like that. Enter the Extensive Graded Reader, and this is a Moodle-based project that someone has created that allows you to see these questions online automatically. So let's just, for fun, go into a course and take a look at these materials. I just love this idea. Here is an extensive graded reader module inside a Moodle website. And if you come here, you can, let's change this to student view, if I can. Nope, I can't. Let's move over a little more. Let's go back. I gotta fix this so that we can see it. Switch to student. And let's see if I can do it this way. Nope, I gotta become a certain person. So, let me become somebody who used to take this course. Really do need to get this fixed so that it works properly. Okay, let's continue here. I did finally get it working. We'll go into the extensive reader here, and I'm pretending that I'm somebody else. But I can now pick a book that I want to read. Okay, so I'm a student, and I'm in this class, and I've read these 2 books already, and I want to read another book. Well, I click on the graded reader, and then I select a publisher. And of course, I have the book in my hand, so let's just say that my book is a Cambridge book. So I pick Cambridge, and then all of the Cambridge books that are in graded readers are listed here. Okay, so The Girl at the Window. Let's just say I read this story. Now I can take that quiz. And all of these are created. So what happened here really is that there were a bunch of companies that created these extensive graded readers. And you've seen the list that I just showed you earlier, right? You saw the list of some of them. Can I go back? Nope, I can't go back. But there was a list of them that allowed me I'm sorry, there were a list of extensive graded readers and companies that were building. Actually, there's a couple hundred of them, of these books. And some guy started making an extensive graded reader module. What he did was he went in and he created a little tool. Students can read any book, and then they go to the module, pick the book, and it allows them to answer questions. Comprehension questions. If they get the questions right, they get a good score. If they read 4 or 5 books at that particular level, the system will automatically say, look, you know this well enough, we're going to put you up to the next level. And so it brings them up to the next level. And it monitors everything that they're doing. All right? So while this guy was building this and adding his own questions, he contacted the publishers and said, hey, I'm doing this. And several of the publishers said, we'll write questions for you. And they wrote the questions and dumped them in. Now, there are about 400 books, and each book has about 15 questions, which means there are now over 1,000 questions here with all these books. And now this library, you have to go out and buy all the books, but then your students can be set up to read and get a score and slowly get progressed higher using the extensive graded reading module inside Moodle. It's a wonderful tool. And it really helps make extensive graded reading a lot more easy to institute. In the past, again, you had to use notebooks, and you had to keep notes on paper, and students would sometimes forget to write in their notebook. This is already in the system. And if you use Moodle as a platform, you can also grade these elements, and students can see progress reports and that kind of thing. It's a wonderful tool to have. Extensive graded readers inside Moodle. Some other activities that you can do with extensive graded reading. As I've already mentioned, you can do an oral book report. At the end of the week, you share your story with somebody else. You can do discussion groups. Maybe 3 or 4 people are working on the same book. They can work together in a discussion group. You can have voting. At the end of semester, which one was the best book, and then you can hand out awards and that kind of thing. Second language learners should read at least 1 book a week. 5 a level, 30 a year. That's just the recommendations from those who do research in extensive graded reading. You should be reading more books the higher you go up. Okay, obviously, just as I don't know if you saw as you go up, there's more and more vocabulary that's needed as you go higher in your language ability. So you're going to need to read more in order to understand. So you're going to have to read more books at the higher levels. And at some point, I'm going to recommend that you start studying grammar explicitly. To be perfectly honest, I have nothing wrong with extensive graded reading, but you should be studying grammar explicitly anyway. If we're only talking about an EGR, right, extensive graded reading program, okay, I can understand not doing that. But in addition to that, you should have other intensive related things going on. Extensive graded reading is a wonderful tool. It's going to allow your students to learn to have a more reading fluency and hopefully enjoy reading. But it's not going to be enough. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. Some other supports that you can be teaching, especially at the lower level, you can teach things like skimming and scanning. You can teach a new word collection, and there are people who keep lists or cards or flashcards or online databases so that they can keep these new words and try to help them memorize them. This is not really part of extensive graded reading. Again, that's more of the explicit form. You can have them reporting on new words, and they find a new word, and then they can talk about it. You can have them use a dictionary. Again, that's really frowned on with extensive graded reading. Guessing meaning from context is something that you definitely can teach them. That doesn't require dictionary or even explicit. They're kind of figuring that out as they read along. But those are some other supports that you can teach and show them how to use at the beginning as you're doing this. That's all for extensive graded reading. If you do have any questions with regard to this chapter, please ask. And again, I am online and on Skype.